and welcome to this analysis of the third day of the third test at the Oval. It's been a fast forward and slow down kind of test series, and we're here this evening after a really emotional, really somber start to the day. We had commemorations to the late Queen Elizabeth II. Vish, what did you think of it? How did you feel it went?
I thought it went perfectly, really, and I said that as someone who I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a royalist, but I thought it was genuinely very impressive and actually quite moving. If you consider that, cricket had to take the lead on this, English cricket specifically, and it's not used to doing that, certainly in a sporting context. And I think there was a point yesterday when everyone was waiting for the first domino to fall and then almost place themselves in line and fall with it. And the ECB and Surrey County Cricket Club and Cricket South Africa were pretty confident of going ahead today, especially after the DCMS meeting with the government talks, where they were basically told to do what they thought was right, essentially. And when the Premier League announced that they would be stopping, and football from top to bottom would be stopping altogether this weekend at about 11:30, I think there was some trepidation, some fear that maybe actually they were going a bit too quickly. But about 2 p.m. yesterday, they decided it was the right thing to do, and by the end of play today, it felt absolutely like the right thing to do. And I think football's probably kicking itself right now because it missed out on a pretty amazing moment, I suppose. And it was immaculately observed. I think the silence, it was interesting actually. The players spoke about it before, but they were a bit spooked, I suppose, by the silence that we were told the national anthems were going to be sung by Laura Wright, who did a brilliant job. She was the first person to walk down, and then everyone in the ground got up and were in total silence as the players walked down. And you could hear the spikes on the concrete as they were coming down the stairs just behind us. And God save the King. Ollie Robinson said they had to remind themselves, they're a bit nervous of seeing the right words. And I suppose from an England perspective, on the field and off the field, it couldn't have gone any better, really.
Yeah, and I actually wonder if South Africa were a little bit spooked by the occasion. We've had something similar in the death of Nelson Mandela, which took place on an evening of an ODI. South Africa had won an ODI, and Nelson Mandela died later that night, and then it rained, and it probably rained for about 10 days following his death, during which time the ODI series had moved to a different location, and they went on to win the series and the test series which followed. But it really felt like we were in a moment of extreme change at that moment, where, yes, things could have been cancelled. I remember there were fears of the India tour being called off, and then the decision was taken that, much like the Queen, Nelson Mandela loved sport, and we should continue playing in his name. And the commemorations afterwards almost felt quite joyous, of a life really well lived. So as an outsider, I was deeply moved by today's events, and I thought that the renditions of the national anthems, in particular that no instrumental accompaniment at all, was spine-tingling. I thought that galvanized England and probably spooked South Africa. And I mean, do you think in those first couple of overs, was it amazing bowling, scared batting, or just emotion?
Well, I think if you were to design a dismissal to get you back into the frame of, I suppose, of watching cricket, then it would be the opposition captain losing his off stump.
Yep.
And I think the way that happened actually was a bit of it felt like a bit of a relief. It was like, okay, we can go back.
And people could cheer, and people did cheer.
People did cheer. It was one of the loudest cheers of the day, actually. Yeah. And I think it was good bowling, because I think England thought it was going to swing. Yeah. It was very overcast. We based on exactly the same conditions that we did on Thursday, where Ben Stokes decided to bowl upon winning the toss, except there was a lot less coming down from those clouds. We only had one break of rain.
The pitch had been uncovered for 3 days,
exactly, yeah. And it didn't actually swing that much. And England very quickly went to wobble seam and got it nipping around off the seam and did it brilliantly. I was trying to think back actually about, it felt like England bowled well and there weren't too many South African misjudgments, but I suppose maybe looking at you from your perspective, you might have seen something that I was probably getting too excited about the bowlers.
I mean, look, I think Cyril Eva's got a little bit of an issue outside the off stump, and I think he's a little bit unsure when the ball is moving. He's nicked off 3 times now, and I just don't know if he's the long-term solution. I think Keegan Peterson has really been quite disappointing in the series. We expected a lot of him, and then we have to remind ourselves he's only played 10 test matches. But then the 2 relative newcomers, Ryan Rickleton's got 2 test caps and Kaya Zondo 1, though he didn't bat in that game. I thought they impressed. Rickleton's got a good way of moving his feet. He's got a nice shuffle across. played one amazing cover drive. Kaya Zondo took on the spinner. South Africa's batting is clutching at straws here, and I don't think 118, the worst score since 1912, which is like even before any one of us can even remember. We can't really contextualize that.
Yes.
It just seems like they've got from not so great to bad to really, really bad, and now possibly to hopefully the worst we're going to see. I wasn't happy with the way that they batted. I don't think any South Africans were. They don't have answers either. We spoke to the batting coach after play. We asked him, can he pinpoint the problem? And he seems like a really pleasant guy and sort of smiles and says, oh, if we knew, we wouldn't have a problem. And that's a problem.
It is, yeah. I would say we're in a kind of golden age of batsmanship. Certainly, we're not watching two sides who, there was a point where England could have taken the game away from South Africa and ensured they're only batting once.
Yeah.
And they didn't
Which
do that.
Which may still happen.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I mean, England are 7 down. Their lead is, 36? It's not that much in the grand scheme of things. I mean, they will...
36 for 6!
Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah. I think the other thing that I found really interesting today is almost compounding South Africa's issues was how well Marco Jansen did. First with the bat and then incredibly with the ball. Took the first 4 wickets. And it really felt like, I don't know, it just really made a mockery of the decision to leave him out of the second test.
Well, that's the thing. We're going to keep going back there, right? Because that's where the momentum of the series changed. South Africa had won so convincingly at Lord's. It seems ridiculous to change a winning 11. Then it seemed even more ridiculous once they'd done it and they couldn't get the game to the point where they brought the 2 spinners in. So we may yet go back to that as the turning point in the series. But for this match, I think, and actually for a lot of the tests South Africa have played, they keep talking about this lack of first innings runs, and the problem doesn't get easier. They don't have partnerships. Their highest partnership today, 36, and their highest partnership in the series has been 85. You need 100-run partnerships, 150-run partnerships if you're going to win test matches. So unless it takes an amazing batting effort from them, I don't want to predict the result too soon, but I think Dean Elgar may become much like Faf du Plessis, much like Sean Pollock, and end up not winning a test series in England. What do you think? Are we there?
I mean, I think you can't get rolled for 118 and win a test match, especially even in these conditions. The fact that England were establishing a lead, and I think actually, it'd be interesting to gauge your thoughts on this because there was a point where Joe Root and Ollie Pope were batting brilliantly together. There were times when they were going above 6 runs and over, and it felt like a bit of a carnival. There was something about the way England played today, specifically with the bat, that felt like let's have a bit of fun. And we can talk of all the things that they've done this summer and the way that they've tried to play positively all throughout this summer. Maybe I'm putting too cute a point on it, but it felt a bit different today. And with that came the unnecessary risk. Ben Stokes getting dropped by Dean Elgar, and then, next time he's on strike, nicking off to first slip. Did it feel like, I don't know, did it feel like a bit end of term, I suppose?
I think so, and I think when Ollie Robinson spoke afterwards and said, we knew with the reduced number of days, even though actually the series has been decided in 3 days in the other 2 matches, but they were quite determined to, let's make sure we get a result that's not a draw. I think sometimes we forget that a draw is also a result.
Yes. Yeah.
But so England were playing in that way that showed us we want something to happen here. And actually, I think South Africa bought into that too much and also were playing like we want something to happen here. Whereas maybe they didn't need to. In the bigger picture, World Test Championship points, South Africa could have taken the draw. It would probably have put them in quite a good position. Now, I don't think we're at any risk of a draw, unless it rains and it's not forecast to rain.
Yeah.
So you're really in a situation where England are holding all the cards. I think they will control the next couple of days unless something happens from the South African lineup that we haven't seen in probably 2 years. And even though it's a foregone conclusion, I think people here want to see that and want to be part of this occasion and almost mark it as a great celebration and a great honour of the end of an era.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie Robinson said as much as well, and it's I think it is quite interesting that for a guy who only just came back into the Test series, or rather into Test cricket full stop, in the previous match at Old Trafford, he has put his stamp on a day like this with his 5 wickets, 5 for 49, bowled brilliantly. He's 49 wickets as well in his career so far, so he's one away from, he'll probably get there, he's one away from 50 in only his 11th Test match, which puts him on a pretty exclusive list. In terms of strike rate as well, his average is down at 19, but, going back to the 5 specifically that he took today, to be aligned with something like this, you want to take 5 wickets every day. It doesn't matter what kind of occasion it is, I imagine. But yeah, something about it just puts you that little bit, I suppose, firmer, that little bit more, in darker ink into the history book. So he's got that for him, and he's been, I want to say, a refine for England, because they found him last year and they probably thought he was lost for most of this year, given how the Ashes panned out and also his issues at the start of the summer. But I think he could actually be quite a good threat in Pakistan. And everyone's worried about time away from Stuart Broad and James Anderson, both of whom bowled brilliantly today.
Yeah,
Anderson only took 1, Broad took
Broad.
4. Yeah, but Robinson is, he's taking the new ball on merit, and he really does look like a leader of this attack.
And that's so interesting that you're talking about your next tour already, which is Pakistan. South Africa go to Australia next. This is not the batting lineup that you want to take to Australia. So they've got a lot of figuring out to do, a lot of questions to answer. They have to find people. You're talking about refinding people. They just have to find them. So that is going to be their task for the next 2 days. We will bring you all the action here from the Oval, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.